great, because you brought us right into this. Westchester County in New York went into an agreement, or was sued by HUD. And they entered into a first stage of an agreement to build so many subsidized housing. And you'll find out that there is no precaution you can take if a suit is going to be forthcoming. That's an argument that simply is not true.
The good news is it runs up the legal bills of the plaintiff as much as it does yours. They don't want to spend money on lawyers.
Right.
Any more than you do.
You shut the light up, can we do that? Let's start, this is Rob Astorino, and I think that you'll like this.
Oh, okay. There is no popcorn.
That's just hope I can get it going.
I've got wine.
The county was sued in 2006 under the False Claims Act of 1863. The charge was that the county accepted federal dollars from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, but failed to study whether race is a factor in housing opportunities. In 2009, former County Executive Andrew Spano and the Board of Legislators settled the case. And critically important, there was never a finding of fact of wrongdoing on the part of the county or an admission of guilt in the settlement. Instead of going to court, the county and the federal government both agreed to settle under the following terms. The county would spend at least $51 million to build 750 units of housing for lower-income people in 31 so-called eligible or mostly white communities by the end of 2016. Now, progress is measured by annual benchmarks and significant penalties for failing to meet them. So let's look at our progress. The county is well ahead of schedule. By the end of 2013, the county must have 300 units with financing in place. We surpassed that benchmark in March. Everyone in the county should be proud of that record, and I know I am. Not just because we are meeting our obligations, but because of the way we are doing it, by working cooperatively with our towns and villages. And I'm proud of how, through the decades, the communities have been building affordable housing, not just to meet their own needs, but also the needs of the entire region. And we have more than 50 awards to show for it, even some from HUD. And for the record, I am proud that Westchester is the 4th most diverse county in all of New York State in terms of African Americans and Hispanics. We are tied with Manhattan. And Westchester's diversity is one of our greatest strengths. And as county executive, I will defend with every tool at my disposal the right of people to live in any neighborhood in Westchester, in any home they can afford. And let me say this very clear. There is absolutely no place for discrimination in our county. The biggest, and really the only issue going forward, is zoning. The federal government has a very different agenda and vision for Westchester. In fact, HUD calls us its, quote, grand experiment. That means Washington bureaucrats, who you will never see or meet, want the power to determine who will live where and how each neighborhood will look. Now, what's at stake is the fundamental right of our cities, towns, and villages to plan and zone for themselves. This home rule is guaranteed by the New York State Constitution. HUD thinks it can trample on Westchester because it has the misguided notion that zoning and discrimination are the same thing. They are not. Zoning restricts what can be built, not who lives there. Zoning exists to keep traffic from endangering kids on their way to school, to prevent factory noise and smoke from invading residential neighborhoods, and to stop raw sewage from polluting our drinking water. Zoning exists to protect quality of life for everyone. Take away the zoning that protects Westchester's reservoirs and watershed, and you put the drinking water of 8 million New York City residents at risk. Now listen carefully, because I know what I'm about to tell you sounds exaggerated and unbelievable, but it's not. And I urge you to go to westchestergov.com and read for yourself the letters I'm about to reference. In its letter of May 13, 2011, HUD insists the county must go, quote, beyond the four corners of the settlement. In other words, they admitted that what they are demanding is not in the agreement, and their demands are outrageous. HUD wants no restrictions in any neighborhood on height, size, acreage, density, number of bedrooms, and lack of water or sewers. In fact, in a letter on March 13th this year, HUD goes so far as to even attack single-family, quarter-acre lots as, quote, restrictive zoning practices that, in their view, could be discriminatory. Really? You know, like many in this county, I live in a modest house on a quarter-acre piece of land, and my home is my biggest investment. And I thought working hard, paying your taxes, and one day paying off your mortgage was the American dream. Now think about what's at stake. The federal government is trying to force me, as county executive, to sue each municipality to abolish even basic zoning protections. Now what does that mean for you if that happens? It means the neighborhood you live in today could change over time, and there is nothing you can do to stop it. A 5-story building or higher could be put on your street, not only by HUD, but by any developer. Because if you take away the zoning rules for HUD, you take away the rules for everyone. And that's not all. New demands by HUD just keep on coming, each one more overreaching than the last. In that same March 13th letter, HUD contends that the settlement's requirement to build 750 units of affordable housing was just a starting point. The county's target is really 10,768, based on an old 2004 Rutgers University study that was never even accepted by the county. Let me say that number again. 10,768 housing units. That's almost 15 times the settlement's requirement. And that study allocates a number to each community. Harrison, 756 units. That's more than the entire settlement. North Castle, 712 units. Bedford, 396 units. Scarsdale, 160 units. The list goes on and on until you reach 10,768. Now, put a dollar figure on 10,768 units, and the cost is between $700 million and $1 billion. Now, to come up with $1 billion, we would have to raise county property taxes 200%. 200%, at a time when the state tax cap is 2%. How's that going to work? And that's just county taxes. School and local taxes would certainly increase too, along with crowded classrooms and a strain on services. And here is what is so frustrating. We have tried to work with HUD. They ask for something, and our staff spends hours and hours to provide them with volumes and volumes of data. For HUD, zoning has become a civil rights concern, and they told us to review their list of 6 restrictive zoning practices. So we did. We studied and analyzed them across all 853 zoning districts throughout Westchester. Then we applied more than 30 additional criteria. In all, we looked at more than 26,000 data points. Conclusion: Westchester zoning is not exclusionary based on race. The major impediment is economics. People live where they choose and where they can afford. HUD wasn't satisfied. Now they wanted a legal analysis. So we asked Professor John Nolan of the Pace University Land Use Law Center, a leading expert on affordable housing. So he conducted a separate legal analysis. And guess what? His conclusion supported ours. Each time we've asked the federal government to provide proof of exclusionary zoning, they come up with no answer. And they certainly have no answer for this. How could the zoning in the settlement's 31 eligible communities be exclusionary if the county is ahead of schedule building affordable housing in those communities? It's pretty obvious. The federal government will not be satisfied until we give them the answer that they want, no matter what the facts are. And now comes the insidious part. To intimidate the county into changing our conclusions on zoning, HUD has been withholding money that was promised to our local communities for the last 2 years. The amount is now up to $12 million. And this money not only goes towards affordable housing, It goes to communities that have nothing to do with the settlement, and some of Westchester's neediest residents for programs like homelessness prevention. You know, I appealed to HUD Secretary Sean Donovan for an explanation and reconsideration. We were denied. And I want to thank the members of the Board of Legislators who joined me this week on a fully bipartisan basis to have this arbitrary decision by HUD reversed, even if that means going to court. So, we've been at this for more than 3 years, and frankly, it is very tiring and disheartening. You know, going up against Goliath is never easy. Some people want me to just give in. They accuse me of being stubborn, or worse. Believe me, the easiest thing for me personally would be to cave in, blame it on the past administration, and not worry about the future. But how do you give in when you were taught as a kid that you have to be willing to stand up for what you believe in? And what you know as an adult, that the thing you treasure most, freedom, is rarely regained if lost. So when you hear me, warn about HUD overreaching, this is it. 31 communities becomes the entire county. 750 units become 10,768. And $51 million becomes $1 billion and a 200% tax hike to pay for it. Now, I had said from day one that Westchester will comply with what's in the agreement, but we will not be bullied or threatened by HUD to do things that are not in the settlement. It all comes down to this. HUD thinks that Westchester is some kind of grand experiment, that it can strip away our constitutionally protected rights, and that it can dismantle local zoning. I say Westchester is our home, not a test tube. I say Westchester residents didn't stop becoming American citizens the day the deal was signed in 2009. And I say nothing gives HUD the right to turn the American dream upside down, and I will continue to stand up for Westchester, our communities, and all the people who live here.
So, we'll put those lights on. Oh, over there. This video really hits home to me because there's so many similarities in these little communities that we're visiting. The David and the Goliath scenario, I mean, it's happening. It's happening, folks.
Yeah, plus we never thought of New Yorkers as like New Hampshireites.
Yeah, huh? Some similarities in this one, that's for sure. So we just have to learn, I think, we need to empower people to speak up and say no. At times when you have questions that you feel aren't being answered, you demand your answers. If you're not satisfied with those answers, even if you're not fully understanding the whole thing, vote no.
We're
Vote
not
no.
fully understanding of it.
Then vote no. You heard nothing by no, but you heard a lot by a yes that you're not informed about.
Croc TV.